I'm Dana Desonie from the Julian Wrigley Global Institute of Sustainability. I'm a proposal manager there. A lot of what I do is edit proposals, and that's everything from content, dealing with a really early draft to, the final copy edits before we actually submit. So Tobin Spratt gave part one of the introductory proposal writing a month ago, and he talked about, in some ways a bigger picture view of how do you write persuasively, what is the purpose of your proposal, and that's probably available online, yes? So it's available online if you missed it. So what I try to do is different stuff from what Tobin did. So I call it the secrets of my magic wand because people often come to me with 18 pages of text for a 15-page proposal, and they want me to cut it. And it's really not that hard because a lot of times people just don't follow sort of the common rules that we will discuss in how to make your text more efficient, straightforward, and just make it a lot easier to read. So if somebody writes a really great proposal and they have 3 pages to get rid of, that's hard. If it's the way most people tend to write, then it's not that hard because there's a lot of tightening you can do. So we're going to talk about some of the skills. People say that I use a sword or a magic wand, so I'm going to tell you my secrets of my magic wand. Okay, this is me in the Canadian Rockies. And so where are we going in this workshop? You can tell it's me because I'm wearing my knee brace. So I have it, it's right here. But anyway, so this is the Canadian Rockies up near Jasper, Banff, one of those two. So where are we going? Well, we're going to talk a bit about compliance, and I know Tobin did talk about compliance last time, but you can't talk about it enough. And then we're going to writing tips, the secrets of my magic wand, and then we're going to talk a bit about readability. How do you make your proposal more readable? Okay, so one super simple thing. How do you know what to put in your grant proposal? Any ideas? This is interactive, by the way. Any ideas? How do you know what to put into it? Has anybody written a proposal? How do you know what to put into it? I know one of you does. This is also in the Canadian Rockies. We went up on a tram, spent a bunch of money to get to the top of a mountain, and that's what we could see was clouds. So how do you know what to put into your grant proposal? Or you're just flying through space? The RFP, okay? And it has a bunch of different names. It could be the solicitation, funding announcement, broad agency announcement, application instruction, proposal guidelines, request for application. I mean, it has a bunch of names, okay? But all funders will have some rules. They'll have like a statement. What are we looking for? We're looking for someone who is going to work on resilience in communities where there's flooding due to climate change, okay? They're going to tell you what they're looking for. Sometimes it's much broader than that. And they're also going to tell you things like how do they want the proposal to look? Like we'll get into this. So this is we do a lot of NSF in my unit, so I tend to focus on that. This is a program solicitation or RFP from NSF, and this is from the Division of Environmental Biology. And so what they're looking for is proposals that fit whatever their focus is at that time. So that's what it looks like. It tells you the date, so it's due January 23rd, annually thereafter. So 2018, 2019, until they say we're done with this and they cancel the call. So that's what an RFP looks like. You should learn the RFP. It is specific to a single call. It will give you the dates that you need to know. Sometimes there might be a letter of interest or something like that. Sometimes you just turn in your full proposal. So they'll tell you the dates that you need to know. Tells you what the funder wants. It tells you eligibility, and I can't tell you how many times I've found an RFP for somebody like, oh my gosh, this is the greatest thing on earth, and then it turns out, well, it's only nonprofits or only cities or only the app. We're not eligible. So you need to, like, immediately when you see something that looks good, look for eligibility. Can a major university apply? If you are a graduate student or a postdoc or an undergrad, sometimes you cannot apply, so you'll need to find like a leader to do it. You can still write it and all that stuff, get the funding, but you need to have some kind of a leader. Anybody has any questions, please just stop me, okay? All right, so they're going to say the specifications, like we need a certain font size, we need a certain whatever. They're going to tell you all that stuff. There's a lot of stuff with budgets, and I won't go into that because if you put a $ in front of a number, I don't understand it. So, but other people do things on budgets, but they will tell you what's allowed. Travel is not allowed, tuition is allowed, you know, whatever. There's a lot of things with subcontracts, collaborators, co-PIs, all that stuff, there's always rules, so they will tell you about that. Okay, now this is for NSF. PAPPG is the NSF broad set of guidelines, and we'll get to that in the next slide. But if there's a discrepancy between the PAPPG, which is the NSF broad set, or the RFP, which is just for your call, the RFP takes precedence. Did that end up making sense or not? So this is the PAPPG, the Proposal and Awards Policies and Procedures Guide. All NSF proposals have to follow these rules unless the RFP for a particular call says differently. Then you go with the RFP. So if this says, we don't want you to talk about students in the proposal, but then your RFP says we want you to talk about students in the proposal, you go with what the RFP says. Okay? What is the worst mistake you can make when submitting a proposal? Tobin talked about this last time. Anybody have any ideas? No? Have it returned without review. Means the proposal is non-compliant. So the first topic we're going to talk about is compliance. And how do you avoid a return without review? How do you know what makes it compliant? Well, we just said so.
We have a question.
The RFP, your RFP or your PAPPG. Yes?
We have a question online.
Okay.
The question is, the PPG is for NSF only?
It's only NSF, but all federal funders will have some set of guidelines and they'll call it something else. And I have to say, most of them are much more obtuse than NSF's. So we do a lot of NSFs, fortunately, in our group, but when you start getting into NIH must have 50 documents that you have to follow. It's insane. So you need to understand your funder and what they have, what their broad guidelines are, what their specific guidelines are. And then, like with NIH, you've got all these crazy things with if you have human subjects, if you have lab animals, all these different things that you have to follow. So you really need to pay attention to all the guidelines that are available to you, and also be sure they're the most recent. You know, because NSF, every year they put out a new PAPPG. And at the very beginning they have, this is all what's different. So you can just go with your old rules except what they've changed for this year. Okay, all units have some kind of a research advancement administrator. All of the people, they are there to help you. So if you have trouble understanding what your RFP is saying, you can go to your RA and ask them. All right, so compliance. What are these little rules that you have to follow? Start it out right. Like, don't write in a different font, a different size, double space. Don't do it. Start right. Start with the right things, okay? Or if you don't, like I usually just magnify stuff, so I don't have to double space and all that. I just magnify it on my computer. So I don't need to make it a bigger font. Because what will happen at the end is, say you wrote it in 12-point font and it turns out, or 11-point font, it turns out it has to be in 12. At the end, you've got 15 pages. Well, now you've got 18 pages or 17 pages and you've got a problem. So start right. So think about your page limit. Most sections in most funders' proposals have page limits. They don't want you going on for 50 pages. All right, the font, really important. Everything has to be in a certain font. The exception is often what's within a figure or within a table. But the figure caption or the table caption may still need to be in that approved font. Mostly there's always single spacing. That's just the way it is. I mean, sometimes it's, and then inch margins on each side. NIH is ½ an inch. That'll cause you problems too. If you start out with a ½ an inch, you're used to doing NIH at a ½ an inch, and then it turns out, oh, I'm doing an NSF and it's an inch, and then you're going to end up at the very end with a problem. So be sure you do all the required sections, and a lot of calls will have, have certain sections, but there'll be maybe one that's different for that call. All the proposals will have supplementary documents, so things like the budget, bio sketches, so that's like your CV or your resume, facilities, all that stuff. Be sure you have all the parts that you need and none of the things you don't need. All right, so NSF does this. When the proposal goes in, it actually goes through a machine and it looks to see if the proposal is compliant. So say you had 16 pages, well, it wouldn't even let you submit it like that because you can't do that. But just say it got there with 16 pages, it would get sent back, return without review. If you're past the deadline, that's it, it's done. They send it back, so all that work is for naught. So at least, even if you don't get funded, it's better to have your proposal reviewed because you'll get those reviews and you'll be able to use them next time when you resubmit or write to another call. All right? Oh. Okay, so they'll return the proposal and the penalty for noncompliance is return without review. You do not want that. All right, so now we're going to get more into the writing, which is what I'm really focusing on in this thing. So you submit your proposal, and the proposal is sent to an external reviewer usually, and the external reviewer might have 12 proposals to read. So it's midnight, the reviewer has been reading proposals for 12 hours, and yours is the reviewer's 12th proposal to read. How do you make your reviewer not just want to drink a glass of wine and go to bed instead of reading your proposal? Okay, you got to make it readable and accessible. And this is like a pie in your face because it seems like obvious, but it's really something that people don't think of enough. That's my husband, by the way, about to get a pie in his face. Okay, so just read the, once we've assembled our ideas, formulated our claims, supported them with good reasons, and organized our text coherently, we still have to express our ideas clearly. Okay, this is from a great book, 10 Lessons in Clarity and Grace. So it's all, so get stuff down on paper. So what you're really doing a lot, I mean, 90% of writing is editing. You've heard that. That's true. So this guy is a ptarmigan, and it was up at the top of that mountain where we couldn't see anything in the Canadian Rockies. Well, we could see him, but hopefully predators don't. So you want to be clear. This guy's, he's obscured. This isn't good if you're a predator, wanting to get the ptarmigan. So I think it wasn't a ptarmigan. Anyway. Hopefully there are no birders in here. All right, so this is my favorite quote of all. Every word should do useful work. What does that mean? That means that if you have a bunch of extra words, like what if you said, Susie is smart and intelligent? Do you need to say smart and intelligent? No, you only need to say one or the other. So every word should be doing some kind of work in your sentence. All right, so one thing that you can do is use shorter words. So let's have, you're a very quiet group, let's have some, instead of accordingly, what might you look? What might you say? So, that's shorter, right? Doesn't make you sound any less smart, it makes it easier to read. Facilitate, help. Immediately, come on, you got it, you got this one.
Fast.
Fast?
Now.
Now. I mean, fast would work, but now. Okay, utilize. Very good. Subsequently. Next. Or then. Expeditious. I think that's yours.
Fast.
There you go. Okay, so do any of you have long words, like these $2 words where you could use a 50-cent word? Any of you have any favorites? You look like you do, you're just not talking. No? Okay. All right, so use less complex words instead of remunerate. Does anybody know what that even means? Pay. All right, I'm going to pay you, not remunerate you. Liaise. Meet. She got it. Enumerate. List. Corporation. Now this is something, you know, people use corporation all the time, so some of them are, Transformation. What does that mean? Change. What are your favorites? Anybody know any big complicated words that we could use a less complicated one? Okay. Replace redundant with simple. All right, I expect you guys to help with this one. Stated requirements. Just requirements. You don't need stated. I mean, obviously, if you're giving them requirements, you don't need to say that they're stated. They are stated because you're giving it to them. Pre-planning is what? It's just planning, because what is post-planning? Right? It's planning. New innovations, what's that? New or innovation, right? Because you don't have old innovations. I mean, I guess you could talk about a past tense, but you don't have old innovations. Mission critical. Critical. Data items. Data, because data are items, right? End results. Results, because when do you have the result? At the beginning? No, you have them at the end. Anybody have any favorites? How about uniquely different? Well, you get unique. Unique gets overused all the time. I mean, if you're different, you're unique. If you're unique, you're different, so you don't need that. Okay, bloated phrases with one word. Replace it with one word. So, until such time as, until. All right? Have a need for, need. Make a decision to, decide. And that's one of the ones when they give me 18 pages and I've got to get it down to 15. These are all through the proposal. You know, they're all through it. It's so easy to get rid of it. Due to the fact that, because, or due to, in the event of, if, are capable of, can, a large proportion of, many, much. Anybody have any they want to share? You guys are so quiet. All right, avoid using more words than you need. So actual fact, blatantly obvious, critical juncture, critically important, each and every. Few in number, final result, first discovered, interact with each other. What can you do? Actual fact? Well, now we have alternative facts. But until recently, facts were facts, right? So there wasn't an actual fact, there was just a fact, okay? You know, something is, it doesn't have to be blatantly obvious, it's just obvious. Something's critical, it's important. You don't need each and every, few in number, well, what else is few? It's a number. Result, first discovered, well, of course, if you discovered it, you were first. Interact with each other, you just interact. Where else would your attitude be but mental? Most unique is just unique. Orbit, around, well, that's pretty much self-explanatory. Experience, repeat again. Revert back. Oh, one of my favorites is 6 a.m. in the morning. When else is 6 a.m.? It's always in the morning. All right, so software is, you don't need that. Something's vitally important, that you get that in proposals all the time. It's just important. Maybe it's vital, but it's not it doesn't need to be vitally important. Well respected, it just is respected. Okay, so when is it okay to use long, complex words? Because some people will tell you don't ever use them, and I don't think that's true. Sometimes you need them. Sometimes when they're central to your field. So if you are writing about paleomagnetism, you don't want to have to say every time the ancient magnetic signature that's found in rocks and, you know, explain all that. You just say paleomagnetism. If you think your audience will not know what that is, then you need to define it up at the top. If you're writing a proposal and you're a paleomagnetism person, they're going to know. If you're writing for children, you might want to rethink it. All right, action potential, there's no other way to say it. And then there is pneumotrimacroscopic silicovolcanosis, okay? So that's something that you get from volcanic ash. So maybe if you're a medical person and you deal with things like volcanic ash, that's a word that you and your colleagues are going to throw around, if you can pronounce it. So you also would use them when they're efficient to use. So you can circumnavigate, you can go around the globe. You know, most people will know what circumnavigate means. If you're writing for children, you might want to say go around the globe. Start your computer. So there's a tinkling sound versus tintinnabulation. Now, my daughter's favorite word in school was tintinnabulation, and she wrote a poem using the word tintinnabulation. It's a tinkling sound, and it's one of those great words that well, it's not really a word, but you know how some words sort of sound like what you're thinking of. So it's onomatopoetic. So you might want to use it then. All right, avoid nounification. This is another way to shorten your writing. So decide. Perfectly good word. I decide today. I will make a decision today. That's a lot more words, you don't need them. Okay? We manage our money. We provide management to our money. I mean, you don't need all those words. So you see what I'm saying? You don't need to say come to a conclusion. You're just going to conclude. You can discuss, or you can have a discussion about, but I would just rather discuss. Examine, we get this kind of thing in proposals all the time. In this work, we will conduct an examination of lab rats. We will examine lab rats. We don't need all that other stuff. All right, so we will consider. We're not need to take into consideration. So are you seeing how this is going? Everybody online see how it's going?
Yep, and they're participating.
They are? Oh, well, what are they saying?
Oh, well, they were giving verb, like buzz, run. They were answering.
Oh, well, let's hear what they're saying.
Oh, we're past it.
Oh, okay. All right. All right, so do not include claims in your proposal. Don't say state of the art. Don't say best of breed. Don't say premier, world-class, leading edge, cutting edge, pioneers, uniquely transformative. Don't say that stuff, okay? Prove it. So if you can stand on one hand, don't tell people about it, show them that you can do it. So don't tell them in our state-of-the-art lab, or we do state-of-the-art work, we do world-class work. Well, everybody can say that. Everybody says that right now their work is uniquely transformative, okay? Don't tell me that, show me that. And then I will, as the reviewer, conclude that, oh, this is transformative work, okay? Does that make sense? Do you see how you don't want to do that? Because, you get proposals that are just full of these words that are just gobbledygook. And, at the end of it all, you don't see that it's really not that transformative, Then you'd probably need to go back and work on it so you make it sound more transformative. Okay? Everybody good? All right. So, okay, this is my new slide from last spring. I made up a word, it's called petist, one of my petist pet peeves. And this is driving me absolutely insane, and it is about I, me, myself, and I. Or me, myself, and I. Okay. Fill in the blank, and you guys need to participate. Barack, Beto, and blank are going on safari. Me, myself, or I. Okay, somebody said I. Oh, I see it over there. Anybody think it's myself? How many times do you hear somebody say myself? I'd say 90% of the time. People are now using myself in that sentence. Various people I work with do it all the time. So they would say Barack, Beto, and myself are going on safari. Somehow it sounds like it's less egotistical to say it or something, but it's become very, very common in modern usage, and it's driving me insane. So don't do it in front of me.
You're driving Kathleen Corley insane too.
Excellent.
That is you.
All right, her thesis committee includes Dr. Crow, Dr. Ponch, and me, myself, or I. Me, exactly. A lot of people say myself, Dr. Crow, Dr. Ponch, and myself. This was actually in a, not that sentence, but this incorrect use of myself was in a proposal that I recently did, and that's what finally drove me to look it up and create a whole paper, which I hung on my wall, on my front of my office, so that people could look at it and hand it to the people that I work with so that they could read it so they would know, and they still completely disregard it. So don't do that in front of me. So it would be me. I wrote the manuscript, me, myself, or I. Myself. Why is it myself in that sentence? It's reflexive, it's reflecting back. Okay, I wrote the manuscript is a perfectly good sentence, but if you say myself, it adds additional information. That means I didn't do it with Dr. Crow and Dr. Ponch. I did it myself. So it does add information, so it is a word doing useful work, but it's reflexive. Okay? Reflective, I should say. All right? Now, we're going to go through this again. It doesn't make you sound smart. It doesn't make you sound less egotistical. It's just wrong. So how do you decide what to do? And everybody's getting it right here. But the trick is Barack, Beto, and I, because you just get rid of Barack and Beto, you say, I am going on safari. You know, you don't say myself is going on safari. All right, so you just get rid of the other actors. Her thesis committee includes, doesn't matter who the other actors are, includes me. Okay? All right, this is good. Take a look. I hope you're finding mistakes. Those of you who do a lot of editing, I'm sure you have the same problem where you try so hard not to correct people because they just get mad. But, you know, you just really want to change that, don't you? Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about passive voice and active voice because that's another way to help make your proposal shorter and clearer. All right. When do you want to use passive voice? When you don't want to take responsibility. Dinner was burned. Don't know how it happened. I didn't burn it. Dinner was burned. When you don't want to assign responsibility. And this is actually a very useful technique with teenagers. The homework wasn't completed. Not you didn't do your homework. It's a use. Okay, the homework wasn't completed. When the actor is unknown, obvious, or unimportant. The honeybees were kept in a humidified chamber. Now, the lab tech probably did that, but it doesn't matter. It's completely not necessary. The recipient is the main topic. So carbohydrates are produced by green plants. To be active voice, you would say, active voice would be green plants produce carbohydrate, but maybe the topic of your paper is actually carbohydrates. So you want to have that be the actor, not green plants. So that's a perfectly useful use of passive voice. Active voice. Okay, so how do you tell if something's passive? You put by zombies at the end of it. So the homework wasn't completed by zombies is a sentence, so you know that's passive. A user survey will be conducted biannually by zombies. You know that's passive. You didn't complete your homework is active. We will conduct a user survey biannually. This is always my favorite example. Okay, so that's a zombie. All right, now, perspective, first person. From a person's point of view, you're telling the story. I am telling the story. I or we. I am saving the world. We are saving the world. That's my perspective. Okay, second person is from another person's point of view. You are being told you should do something. You should fix your marriage. Okay, so a second person is telling you something. Third person is from the narrator's point of view. Those of you who are old enough to remember these people, you might know the one on the right, that's Bill Clinton. This is Bob Dole, and they ran against each other for president a long time ago. And Bob Dole had the annoying trait of talking about himself in third person. So he said at this debate, if you had to leave your children with Bob Dole or Bill Clinton, I think you would probably leave them with Bob Dole, said Bob Dole. Instead of say, you would leave them with me. You know, he's trying to prove that he was trustworthy. I thought it proved that he was just kind of an nincompoop, but that's okay. All right, so first, second, and third person. So those are the words you use for first person: I, me, my, mine, myself, we, us, our. You, your. These is second. You, your, yours, yourself, yourselves. Third person. You can read all that. So in a sentence or in a proposal, there are sometimes rules where they don't want you to use first person. The front page of an NSF, your project summary, cannot have first person. The rest of your proposal can, okay? But the front page can't. But in this case, to achieve this, we will study, so that makes it really easy instead of making it really obtuse. Okay. Another thing that you should be careful about in proposals is to be consistent. Sometimes it's not really clear what's correct, and I always look it up to see. But for example, do you spell everything the same, capitalize, punctuate, do everything consistently? And in the same paragraph, you will find somebody doing different things for the same word. Yes?
We have a question online. For single PI proposals, is it better to say I blah, 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 or we blah, 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 even if we have a team of graduate students?
I think that I would always try to use we if possible. If you are doing something like an NSF career, or we just got, one of our PAs got a USDA FFAR, which is like a young investigator, you know, who's really on the move, then I think you can use I. I mean, if it's really just you, then go ahead and use I, but usually there's a team. Usually there's more than just you doing the work, and I think we just sounds a little better because it does recognize that you're getting help, okay? All right, so this is all the different ways you might see a postdoctoral researcher referred to. You could use the top one or the bottom one. I think you could probably do that interchangeably. Like you might say postdoctoral researcher, then use postdoc later, because anybody who's reading your proposal knows what a postdoc is. But what I wouldn't do is have it all those different ways in the same proposal or in the same paragraph, and I've seen it like that all the time, where people use the same one. Now again, you could use postdoctoral researcher and postdoc in the same paragraph, as long as you use the first one first, and then just do postdoc after that. But I wouldn't go back and forth. I wouldn't want to use the same thing, use it differently in different places. Capitalization is something that people have a hard time with. So remember, a proper noun is capitalized. So, the Grand Canyon is the name of this canyon. Earth is the name of our planet. So a lot of people, we grew up not capitalizing Earth, but you would capitalize Jupiter, so you should capitalize Earth. Grand Canyon is a very Grand Canyon. Now it's a description. It still uses the same two words, but it's not the place's name anymore. It is not the grandest canyon. No, that distinction belongs to Valles Marineris, which is on Mars. Okay? So you see how when I capitalized, when I didn't. The Julianne Wrigley Global Institute of Sustainability, that's all capitalized because that is our proper name. The Department of Psychology, their proper name is the Department of Psychology, so it gets capitalized. So it's cool. But ASU has a cool psychology department. So that's not their proper name anymore. So does that make sense? Okay. Deleting redundancy. Avoid repetition of words or phrases in adjacent sentences. And combining two sentences might require changing words, and then you can add linking words. So take this two sentences. Tom didn't eat his piece of pie. I got a spoon and ate Tom's piece of pie. How could we shorten that so that we're deleting words we don't need?
I ate Tom's pie.
I ate Tom's pie. Anything else? I mean, does it need to be that you got a spoon? You did? You wanted to know it was a spoon? Oh, I did, right. That would actually be, and that's a little bit more dramatic way to put it. I mean, you can use punctuation to kind of dramatize something. Make your reader wait a little bit. Tom didn't eat his pie, semicolon. I did. That's actually great. It's a little dramatic. So you could say, Tom didn't eat his pie, so I got a spoon and ate it, but you really need to say the spoon. you know, maybe if there's a special spoon that you use, but then you would say, I got mom's special silver spoon and ate it, right? Tom didn't eat his pie, so I ate it, or what Sananda said, those are all good, okay? So we got rid of a whole lot of words. So we've got our 18-page proposal way down here from all these little tricks. So you leave out unnecessary information is another way. Out of 62 samples, 40 tested positive and 22 were not positive. Now, if you're doing third graders, you might want to say that. If you're writing a proposal, I think it's pretty obvious to your reader that if 40 were positive, you don't need to say 22 were not positive. Unless maybe a couple failed. So 20 were not positive and 2 failed. You might need to include that information. Okay? All right. So we're talking about proposals. This is more general guidance. Sentences of 1 to 14 words are understood by 90 to 100% of readers. After 14 words, it drops down, and then 44 words are understood by less than 10%. If you're writing a proposal to NSF or NIH or whoever, you're dealing with an intelligent audience. You don't need to stick with the 14-word guide, but it's a good guideline. So what we have here, and I'm going to talk about readability and how you get these numbers soon. But a provider-based clinic model dictates that outpatient facility, oh, you just read it. Okay, do you understand what it said? Probably. I mean, you're all intelligent people. So, yeah, you did. It's at 19th grade, so whatever that is, like graduate school. Okay? We're all at a university, we can read that. You might not want to throw all those kinds of sentences all together in a proposal because it's going to tire your reviewer's brain. So what else could you do? Well, you could divide it into smaller sentences, and you can see how I did that. All right. So how could we make it even more simple? Any ideas? Well, one idea would be to just create something with bullet points. And I do that fairly frequently. It does two things. It makes it easier for your reviewer to read, but it also sort of breaks up this text, this wall of words that you've created in your proposal. So now you've got something that helps the eye focus. We've got all of these little bullet points, and I can get the gist of each of those little bullet points a lot more easily than I can get the gist of a giant paragraph. Okay? We could do it even more easily, where we've taken out all the common words that we didn't need, that we just repeated from time to time, and we do it this way. Because basically what we were talking about in that paragraph was the benefits of going to this new model. Okay? And there you have the benefits. So now we were, what, 19th grade or whatever we were at before? Now we're at 10th grade. Intelligent people can read 10th grade, although I think they write most newspapers in 8th grade. But 10th grade is a pretty good level to be at, even for a non-academic audience. Okay, here's a scientific example. Go ahead and read it. Any ideas of what to do with it? Throw it out. So what do we do with that? We put something in parentheses, made it first person. What? So somebody said something.
A comment online was break up the long clause-filled sentences.
Yes, break up the long clause-filled sentences. So there's another possibility there. We made more sentences in the then number 2, which makes it easier to read. Because the brain is looking for these little bits, and you've helped your reader by separating those little bits with periods. Okay, so now we're going to talk about how do we get these readability scores. How many of you have ever done this? Not too many. So, I used to be a freelance writer, and I wrote a lot of stuff for like middle school and high school, so this was like my best friend. Because I tend to write for a higher audience, and so I would have to go through and do these things to take my work and make it more readable for like a middle school audience. So, what it looks at, the Flesch and Kincaid is actually on Word, and I'll show you how to get to it. But it will give you the readability, it gives you the number of words in the sentence, and it assesses the short versus long words, short versus long sentences. So this is what its math is. I don't care. But that's how it's going to calculate your thing. So this is how you get to it. You go to Microsoft Word to File, Options, Proofing, Show Readability Statistics. Chances are that's already checked on your computer, but if it's not, go in and then you just go run a spell check, and it will give you the reading, or the grade level. So you can do it on a sentence or a paragraph or the entire document, and you can go through and change stuff as needed. One of the ways to lower the grade level is to simply divide a long sentences into 2. That's going to help you a lot. Find jargon words and replace them with more used words, stuff like that. There are other tools that are available. You can find them if you feel like you need more help. This is perfectly fine for most uses, I think. So go ahead and read that and see what it came out with. So what it's done is it's told you it's 87 words. Characters were useful sometimes in proposals because they might give you a character limit, like 500 characters. It's 1 paragraph, 4 sentences. So words per sentence was about 22. Remember it said that 14 was readable by most people, but you're dealing, this is from straight out of a proposal. You're dealing with, academics, so it's fine. It's not passive. It's about, now reading ease is a different thing. I just use grade level. So 16th grade. So basically a college senior can read it. And all the people you're writing for probably have more education than that. So that's what you can get from this, your readability statistics. All right, so let's take a look at that and see how you might change it to make it more readable. What number am I on and how many more do I have?
What number? What slide? I don't know what number.
Oh, never mind. Any ideas for how you might change that? That was also straight out of a proposal.
Someone is typing up.
Oh, good, okay. That's also from a proposal I edited.
Kathleen Corley says, get rid of unnecessary words.
Okay, get rid of unnecessary words. So let's go here. This is that. It's just the same thing. So the grade level was 20. And this was straight out of a proposal that I got. So go ahead and read that and see how it makes it a little bit more readable. So what do you like about this? You better like the second one better. But what do you like about the second one rather than the first one? I'm sorry? It's broken up a lot more. I got rid of, like, for example, when you're talking about unnecessary words. So we have develop self-regulation and self-care behaviors. I just said helpful for developing self-regulation and self-care, which are necessary for disease prevention. So I made it a little bit shorter by doing that. You don't need, on the other hand, yoga, a holistic practice, enhances mental health and cues cardiovascular. It just does that. You don't have to, if it's important, you could, like if you're doing a medical thing, you might need to put cardiovascular risk factors. But if you're writing to like NSF, maybe it doesn't matter, yes.
Atif shared, reduce the length of the sentences, and then Taylor asked a question.
Okay.
When making text more readable, how can you keep the qualifiers? For example, in this case, the word potentially was removed.
I keep qualifiers only if they're really necessary. Academics tend to qualify everything to the point where it's very, very difficult to read and nobody believes anything they say. So I try to get rid of them where possible. Sananda, do you have a comment on that?
Not particularly. I mean, it depends on the context also, what comes before. If you're discussing two different, making a comparison or scientific evaluation, that's where qualifiers possibly make some
Right.
effect.
Right.
There's context that makes a lot.
Right.
Like this particular one, yoga, holistic practice, you're comparing it to something else that will show compare and contrast type of thing, then the first sentence might be.
Right. So basically she said what I said because I don't know if they could hear her.
Yeah, reiterate it.
What she said was that sometimes scientifically you might need to put in the qualifier, but basically, I mean, just what I said, try to get rid of it when you can. So, you know, and because I'm an editor, I give it back to the PI. And if the PI was really, really into having those qualifiers in there, he or she would put them back in. And I try as an editor not to ever make the same changes twice. I don't succeed, but I try not to. Or if they do something, and this happens frequently, they'll change something back to the way they had it before. If I decide it's really, really important, I will change it again and write a reason why. At the end of it all, it's their proposal, so they decide. Okay. All right, this is just make your proposal easy to understand and read. So Michael Northrop talks about all this stuff, and he's the next seminar coming up. But you break up your text, bullet points, flowcharts, figures, orient the viewer with headings and subheadings. You can judiciously underline, italicize, bold. Don't put in tiny fonts. Don't use illegible figure labels. If you put in a figure, be sure that it's big enough for your reviewer to see what it is, or otherwise don't put it in. There's no need. Limit jargon, acronyms. So look at this. This is actually Latin, so I don't expect you to read it. But this is what your reviewer sees at midnight, right? They're going to fall asleep. That helps, right? We've put in some subtitles, we've put in a figure, we've got bullet points. That all helps. Okay, makes it a lot easier. You don't look at that and go, oh my God, I need a glass of wine. Okay, so how to wave the magic wand. In order you would shorten words, shorten sentences, and improve readability by playing with your words and sentences in Flesch Kincaid. And that, when I was writing for middle school people, it was kind of fun. It was like a game to go back and forth with. If I change this, what does it do to the grade level? All right, the take-home message. Active is greater than passive. We will train. Specific is greater than general. 25th grade students, fewer and simpler words is greater than lengthy and complex. Be careful about jargon. If you're going to, and one thing that I see all the time is people will put in parentheses an acronym. So food, energy, and water systems. And they'll put FUSE. If throughout your proposal you're going to talk about food, energy, and water systems, then go ahead and say FUSE and then use it throughout your proposal. But lots of times people put that in and they never use it again. Or they might use it once, in which case it's not worth having used your reviewer's brain to learn that acronym, because you're not going to use it. So be judicious about how you use acronyms. Future tense is greater than the conditional. We will is better. Tone, collaborative, confident, authoritative, but not egotistical, arrogant. So, I know what I'm doing, but I'm not necessarily the very best at it in the world, okay? I have the best words. There's the references. This is the next workshop, which will be by Michael Northrop, who is like super awesome, super duper awesome. He gives a great seminar. And so one of my favorite quotes, perfection is an admirable goal, but it is the enemy of done. All right? Sometimes you just got to let it go. You could also get rid of some words that aren't that useful. Perfection is the enemy of done. Right? That's what I actually have had on my wall. All right, well, that's it. Any questions? Either in the room or online.
Somebody is thinking online.
Okay. So Michael's saying he uses Mission Impossible music, like way better than this. Definitely should come. Yes.
There was a request
Yes.
for the slides be passed out afterwards.
You do that, right?
Yep.
LJ does that.
Yep.
Anything else?
Thank you. Thank you for a great seminar.
Okay.
I think
All right. Well, thank you all for coming. Good.
there's
Well,
still some
you
people
don't need it.
typing.
Oh, someone's typing.
Yeah,
So
I'm
now
just
that you
gonna
don't need
wait.
it.
I think they're all saying thank you.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, thank you for coming. And definitely come to Michael's. He's super awesome. Let me go back to where so you can write it down. Okay. So that's something I need a lot of help with too, is because I'm a word person, so I don't always see where a figure might go in really well.
Yeah.
Any more things?
Okay, yeah.
Oh.
There is a question.
You guys can go if you want.
There is.
A question.
All right. My question is, the session is specific to proposal writing or for any scientific writing?
It totally can work for manuscripts. I mean, why would you not use excess words in a proposal but use them in a manuscript? I mean, so it's totally useful. It's just I'm on the grant proposal team, and that's what we're doing here. But no, absolutely. In fact, in any kind of writing, I mean, if you write a note to your child, you don't need excess words, because I do this all the time. I edit all the time, so, So yeah, you don't need it. And manuscripts, unfortunately, we don't edit manuscripts in our group, but the principles are all the same. So, okay.
All right.
Thank you.